bolt system, not bolt system, we'll say like half of a bolt system, new Bernoulli bolt from Adrenaline. It's going to be coming in the new Adrenaline Luxes. This is one of those things you're getting in that idle. So it's one of the actual upgrades that's coming in the Adrenaline idle. And what's kind of neat about these is you can use it really, we'll just let this B-roll kind of video play out, and I'll pause it when I get to spots when we're talking about it. So it's kind of cool. You can put this thing in 2 different guns. So say you don't have an Adrenaline idle and you want some of that, like, you know, better shot quality that the idle Adrenaline version's getting, I should say. Or say you have a Shocker Era and you want some of that. You can buy this bolt system, the Bernoulli bolt from Adrenaline, for $150, and it will fit in your idle or your Era. But only those 2 guns, kind of, right? So one of the things they did with the idle and the Era is actually lengthened the whole bolt cycle just a smidgen. So the whole gun is like this much longer. So it's a little bit longer, right? So the bolt system in general is longer. So these you can put in the older guns. So say you have a TM40 or an amp, it will work in there. But because the bolt has to go a little bit further forward, the bolt can actually get stuck in the barrel. But if you use larger size barrels, like if you use any barrel over a 6.84 bore size, you can use this in the previous guns like the TM40 or the amp. But you do have to use that bigger, you know, bigger barrel, or that bolt could get stuck in the barrel. So this whole thing, right, it's called the Bernoulli bolt. So it's coming with the bolt itself. You can see right there in my left hand. It's coming with the bolt guide right there. And then on the tip of the bolt guide, it's going to be the bolt guide extension. So those are the 3 pieces. 3 pieces? Oh, you actually get the can as well. So you get the can. This is just not shown there because if you put it inside, you can't really see it as well. Can. Yes. So the whole concept of this thing and the Bernoulli principle, I'm going to read what I wrote down, and then I will try and like re-explain it. This is a physics situation, right? So the Bernoulli principle. So the Bernoulli principle is, I'm going to just read what the definition is. Bernoulli principle: an increase in air speed of a fluid occurs simultaneously with a decrease in pressure. So in other words, when air is moving faster, or when water is moving faster, or plasma is moving faster, it will drop in pressure. So essentially, I'm going to read this. When you force a large volume of air through, when you force a large volume of high pressure air through a small opening into a low pressure environment, the air speeds up and the pressure drops. So you might be familiar with this concept with a gardening hose. So when you turn on the hose, the water, you know, just flows out at the same pressure inside the hose. You know, it just kind of, it just comes out at the, you know, same speed or same pressure. But when you put your thumb over that hose or over the nozzle, you kind of narrow the opening, and then that water pressure inside of that hose increases. And then the water coming out speeds up significantly, and that pressure drops. You know, you can kind of like visualize, or, you know, we've all kind of messed with the hose, so you can kind of experience that. But that's kind of the way paintball guns always work, right? It's always a high pressure air coming out and leaving into a low pressure environment. But the Bernoulli principle with like the Adrenaline Bernoulli bolt, on the inside, they have, it's kind of hard to see, but let's go back to, let's find that right there. So the way that works, that Bernoulli principle, the bolt actually tapers toward the end. So it's straight and then gets tapered at the end. So the air is actually like going forward and then forced through that smaller opening, speeds the air up and lowers the pressure. So what that means is that you can run lower pressures, the whole system, the whole gun's going to run at lower pressures. So it's going to be a little, maybe a little bit more air efficient, a little bit quieter, maybe a little bit easier on paint, just because of that reduction in air, or just because of that Bernoulli principle in lowering that pressure once it actually impacts that paintball. There's another part of the bolt as well, you can see how those little slots are coming out the end right there. On the regular Lux Idol, there are just holes there. So there's holes all along the back of the bolt. And the idea behind that is that once air travels, so the way this whole thing works is, let's go to my top-down camera and let's see if I can explain. Let's see if I can explain those holes on the back of the bolt a little better visually. Let me zoom in. So that's your cool little box. It's nice and magnetic. Got the Bernoulli principal equation right there on the front, if it'll focus. Really likes focusing on my hands. Oh, it's not even in there. Put it right there. So that's that whole thing. So that's that can. There's that bolt. So what happens with the Lux Idol and the Adrenaline, really, they're kind of working the same way. Normally what would happen is air would go over, it would go over that O-ring, and then air would shoot down the bolt. But because there's those holes there, what's kind of happening is the air gets released a little bit right there, shoots down the bolt, and then the remainder of the air gets shot down the bolt. So it's kind of like a big burst and then a slower burst of air. That's kind of one of the reasons why the Idol shoots a little bit softer than the TM40. And then adding those slots right there just slows down the air delivery a little bit more. So rather than the Idol just having a hole, these slots allow the air to come out just slightly earlier, making that shot just a little bit softer. We can also see on there the guide. There's that valve guide extension. That's what that piece is right there. They've actually decreased the volume, or I should say the size of that hole right there. That hole is actually used to recock the whole system. So excess air goes in there and then recocks the gun. But reducing that size right there actually makes that recock and that return a little bit softer, also kind of making that whole system just a little bit easier and a little bit less kicky than the stock Idol bolt. That gray color is actually WS2 coating, which does stand for tungsten disulfide. It's apparently the second slickest lubricant or dry lubricant on the planet. So it's just like really, really like slippery when you touch it. That just means that, you know, if you have a worn out O-ring or you forget to put grease on or something like that, just having that slipperier surface just makes everything kind of move around a little bit better. The Bernoulli bolt, and I shot this thing on Sunday. Was it Sunday or Saturday? I don't know. And I think I could tell a difference, right? Like putting it in a stock Idol, I definitely feel that like the gun might have been a little less snappy, maybe a little bit smoother. So if you're looking for maybe that, maybe more traditional feel that we're getting from maybe like older Luxes that are a little bit smoother and not as like crisp and snappy feeling, you know, definitely going for that Adrenaline Bernoulli bolt is going to help that whole thing. It's really cool, and it's just a way to maybe get a little piece of that Adrenaline Idol. I mean, the Adrenaline Idols are quite expensive, and you're getting, I think, a really good value, honestly. The Adrenaline Idols are priced kind of crazy, actually. They're only really like $500 more than a stock gun, and you get like a crap ton of stuff. And one of the things is that bolt. So if you don't want to spend all that money on an Adrenaline gun, you can kind of get a taste of it with the Bernoulli bolt.